Do you miss these days? Because I do. At the end of 2018, Daniel Ricciardo and Red Bull Racing parted ways, having together scored 29 podiums, including 7 wins. For many, this seemed to be a brave decision, given that Daniel had chosen to move to Renault. However, he was adamant this was the right choice for him, and believed that this move would bring in the World Championship he'd always desired. However, the move didn't work out for Ricciardo as well as he might have hoped. The idea of carrying the team back to glory was nothing more than just an idea. While they achieved 2 podiums in 2020, it was not to be for the partnership, and Ricciardo moved to McLaren for 2021. Many people expected Ricciardo to perform for McLaren the same way that he'd been doing with Renault, but for a combination of reasons, he's been lagging behind Lando Norris this season fairly significantly. A win in Monza and a couple of 4th place finishes have bolstered his points tally and put him 8th in the championship, but it's still difficult for me to say that this season's been a breakthrough for him. I'm sure you've heard Crofty mention the McLaren is tricky on the brakes by now, as he mentions it at least 105 times per weekend. For a driver who is known for his skill on the brakes, this was not the news that Ricciardo would have wanted to hear. He's been getting used to it fairly quickly given the circumstances with the help of McLaren, but something I can't ignore about Ricciardo is how he left Red Bull just before things started to go back uphill for them. We know now that part of the reason Ricciardo left Red Bull was as a result of the preferential treatment given to Max Verstappen and the hideous reliability of 2018. However, I can't stop asking myself, what if he never left Red Bull? Now, the fun thing with this video idea is that what if is such an opinion-based question that I know you'll have some completely different ideas to me, and I would love to hear them in the comments, as long as you keep it friendly of course. But anyway, that is enough waffling, let's get into the topic of this video. Shall we? In 2019, Red Bull changed engine supplier from Renault to Honda, and I'm going to assume that part of the reason Ricciardo changed was because of skepticism about the Honda engine, given how terribly it had done with McLaren in the years leading up to 2018. However, Ricciardo's decision would turn out to be a bad one, as not only did his first race with Renault end with an engine failure, but the Honda engine suffered just 1 failure over the season. Now, it should be mentioned that Ricciardo only suffered 1 engine failure over the season as well, meaning that it was 1-1 between Renault and Red Bull, but bear in mind that the Red Bull was able to fight for podiums and wins, whereas the Renault would occasionally be stuck outside of the points, which did not bode well for a championship-hungry honey badger. Had Ricciardo been with Red Bull in 2019, I think it would be fair to say there were another 2 race wins on the cards, and in 2020 it could have been a whole lot more. The Renault car in 2020 was much improved over the previous year, but it was still miles off the Red Bull. While it was still only Verstappen who took wins with the car, there were certainly opportunities for the other driver to have won, including during the opening round when Verstappen's car failed and Albon could have taken the win. In fact, Verstappen's 2020 season was plagued with bad luck, so if Ricciardo had a bit of good karma for once, then he could easily have walked away with at least a win and several podiums, especially with Ferrari out of the picture for podiums. As it stood for Ricciardo, he managed 2 podiums with the Renault RS20 and finished 5th in the championship thanks to some very impressive consistency. Still, it could have been at least 4th or 3rd for him last year. Now, before I get too carried away as a Red Bull fan, let's get back down to earth for a second. Towards the end of 2018, it was clear that Verstappen was going to be Red Bull's #1 driver, and that had very much been the case ever since Ricciardo left. But again, if Ricciardo was still in the team, then would this have been the case? I mean, it's not like he was struggling for pace in 2018, was it? Sure, the reliability wasn't playing into his hands, but when he wasn't running from a burning car, he was super consistent. The same goes for Verstappen in 2018, so anyone claiming that things would have been radically different in 2019 can fuck. As a Verstappen fan, I still stand by my opinion that Verstappen is a better driver on natural ability than Ricciardo, but he's not perfect. Nobody is. My point, therefore, is that it would be unreasonable to say that Verstappen would have wiped the floor with a driver he was nip and tuck with the year before, just because the FIA told the teams to remove the cutlery collection that had built up on the front wings. The Red Bull second seat issue is sort of the same issue with McLaren if you think about it. The car will be just as unusual to drive for both drivers, but Lando Norris has had longer to adjust than Ricciardo. It's plain to see that McLaren is a bit more sympathetic with bad performances than Red Bull is, but my point is that Ricciardo had very much adjusted to the Red Bull going into 2019, and that he would most likely have been just as consistent as he was in 2018, just without the need to jump out of 200-mile-an-hour bombs every 2 races. So let's get to the juicy part. 2021, otherwise known as right now. While Hamilton may be leading both championships at the moment thanks to Lewis Hamilton's ridiculous consistency, it seems almost inevitable that Verstappen will go on to win the Drivers' Championship, which I know I've just jinxed. I'm so sorry. Sergio Perez is the latest candidate to be beaten by Verstappen, and while he's occasionally done what he's supposed to do as the second driver of the fastest car on the grid, as in getting podiums and wins when Verstappen doesn't finish the race, the fact remains that Perez has less than half of the points of Verstappen and is languishing in 5th. Had Ricciardo been in that car, I genuinely believe that Red Bull would be leading both championships, as there would have been someone to take points away from Hamilton when Verstappen had bad races, plus that would have meant more points for Red Bull. Not to mention, Ricciardo's a better driver than Verstappen on some tracks, so it could have been a 1-2 the other way, a win-win as far as Lord Marco is concerned. It seems to me that Red Bull were desperate to keep Ricciardo, and to be honest, I wish he had stayed. Both Ricciardo and Verstappen have their strong and weak tracks, and I don't think the points gap between teammates would be all that big. But as I've already alluded to, I think Verstappen is a slightly better driver. Ultimately, I don't think Ricciardo would have won that title with Red Bull as a result. He'd have the team, but Verstappen is just too settled there, and Ricciardo would have to beat him elsewhere. And I see no better place for him to be than McLaren. We're already seeing the rewards of the efforts both parties have put in, and if McLaren nail next year's regulations like I believe they will, then I can genuinely see Ricciardo winning his first world championship with them. If he'd stayed with Red Bull, I think it would be fair to say he'd have won several more races, taken more poles and set more fastest laps, which would have been great for both Red Bull and Ricciardo, but it's not a world championship.